Imagine that you were in 2004 and a fan of 2D Super Mario platformers. There have been many ports or remakes of the previous mainstream Mario games, such as Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, or the advanced ports on the Game Boy Advance in the previous years, but when's the next time Mario would return to his 2D side-scrolling roots? At E3 2004, Nintendo would finally reveal Mario's next great side-scrolling adventure, New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. This is Mario's grand return to the 2D platformer genre that didn't disappoint. With its fun level design, multiplayer features, and new power-ups for people to try out, it's become such an iconic game. In fact, many consider it to be synonymous with the DS and one of the must-have titles. Such a fun and well-designed game must have had some things left in development. I mean, this was Mario's return to the 2D platformer genre in over a decade. There must have been a bunch of things that were left over. So, today on the Beta Files, as suggested by James JVE, I'll be talking about the beta of New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. The first time we ever got a look at the game was at, well, obviously, E3 2004, and it originally looked like this. A bit cartoony compared to its final counterpart, isn't it? Because it's in the very early stages of development, some of the animations might have been taken from Super Mario 64 DS. The animation for the second jump in the triple jump has a similar animation to when Mario triple jumps in 64 DS. There's also this jump animation that's similar to the somersault from the game too. In general, most of the jump animations look a bit stilted and stiff, especially the third jump of the triple jump. You might have noticed the different aesthetic design of the question mark blocks and pipes because they don't look the same. Some platforms even have a Yoshi's Island inspired design like these platforms inside the castle. The tech demo also contains some enemies and Bowser here for some reason. Though, these regular Koopas don't retreat back into their shell like they usually do. Instead, they just kind of fall off the screen, acting like a Goomba getting hit with a fireball. The Goombas themselves were given an upgrade by growing into giant Goombas with the help of this grey mushroom, which could be a beta design of the Mega Mushroom. This could mean at one point in the development, giant Goombas could have originally been regular enemies instead of being a one-time boss in the World 4 castle, though that's just me speculating. In contrast, when Mario becomes bigger, his animations become just slower variants of animations of his regular form. The next time we would see any footage of New Super Mario Bros. Would be at the following E3, where the game looks a bit more polished. If you take this footage at face value though, there is something we can spot right off the bat. It's the fact that both Mario and Luigi are in the same level. In the final version, you can only select either Mario or Luigi for the single player campaign. The E3 footage clearly shows a mode that puts both Mario and Luigi in the same level. Either this hints at a versus mode that could have been a race to the finish type of multiplayer, or the single player campaign would have a co-op mode. The multiplayer mode was also going to include a blue exclamation mark box that we can see in this screenshot, and, according to IGN and this article on PressTheButtons.com, was used to catch up to the lead player if one player was far behind. Before we take a look at the bottom screen, let's take a look at some of the beta elements on the top screen. This beta Red Ring actually has some interesting mechanic tied to the co-op multiplayer. I'll be talking about it later though, as it's still located within the game's files. The Mega Mushrooms seem to have finally been implemented into the game, but the color scheme for the mushroom seems to just replicate the same red and white color scheme of regular Super Mushrooms. The flags on the flagpoles also got a change in color and design because the flag is just a solid red color and doesn't even have the skull design on it. Some of Mario's moves from Super Mario 64 DS still linger within this game build because Mega Mario can punch his enemies similar to his 64 DS counterpart. Enemies from 64 DS were also added into the game, like these spin drifts you can spot throughout this trailer. Let's go to the bottom screen where the entire HUD is basically completely different. The map for the level length is a green bar with a red flag at the end instead of a castle, along with the type of level you're in on the bottom of the level bar. The indicators for lives and the score are still here, but what's been added are the indicators for coins and the timer. The biggest change here is how many power-up slots there are. Instead of just one, Mario has 2 more power-up slots, making it possible for him to bring 3 power-ups into one level. The next footage is some of the game being played on the show floor at the same E3. The first thing the player does is grab a fire flower, which getting the power-up doesn't freeze the screen like it does in nearly every single 2D Mario platformer. Next is this rainbow ring that turns red when Mario goes through it. It is a red ring in case you were wondering, but like I said before, I'll be going into more detail later as the ring is still located inside the files for the game. As Mario continues onward through the level, he starts to do a triple jump. It's a bit cut off because of the height of the jump, but on the third jump here, Mario does this little kicking animation which kind of harkens back to jumps like Yoshi's Flutter Jump or Luigi's version of it in 64DS. In this castle level, there's a switch right at the beginning of the scene. It kinda looks similar to the switches used in Super Mario 64DS. The final game switches are smaller, but both of them do basically the same thing. These spinning exclamation mark boxes are probably the same co-op multiplayer boxes as said in the IGN and the PressTheButtons.com article, acting as a way for the second player to catch up should he fall way behind. The only difference in this case is that the box itself is a yellow color. The castle's breakable bricks are also in a different color. The bricks are in a bright maroon color, which really contrasts from the castle's aesthetic of blue and gray. The exclamation mark boxes seem to be everywhere though, as here, there are two of them, with one being yellow and one being blue colored on the pendulum. I'm going to assume that this was an oversight, but it is weird to see two of the same boxes nearly next to each other. It's interesting to note that coins come out of the box when you hit it, probably if you were the first in the co-op mode. As Mario continues to climb down the castle, he arrives at a point where the player decides to use the wall jump, which is technically the first time we've seen the wall jump in a 2D game. The technique is a bit faster than in the final version, and it even has different animations on Mario jumping, one where he spins, and the other one where he does a kick. The very first boss fight that the development team decided to show off is the Mega Goomba boss fight that was placed in World 4. The boss itself isn't that different from the final version of the game. The only thing that's missing from the boss is the visual indicator of the Mega Goomba turning red when you stomp on him. The arena itself is missing the green platforms that raise you up high enough to ground pound the Goomba. Instead, the challenge is to jump on these wooden platforms that slide in and out after a certain amount of time, when they're activated by this switch. After the boss fight, when Mario grabs the key, he doesn't do the special animation he does like in the final game. The development team probably didn't develop the animation yet, so they just stuck in the regular level clear animation you see here. The footage transitions to Mario getting a Mega Mushroom, and something about even just getting it is different. The Mega Mushroom in the final game comes out when you hit the block only once, while in the footage, we see Mario having to hit the block multiple times in order to bring out the Mega Mushroom. The mushroom itself also has the traditional red and white mushroom color scheme, as opposed to its final design of having the colors of yellow and red. As he gets the mushroom, a Mega Goomba, who's here for some reason, walks over to him and they both bounce back after hitting each other. Instead of jumping or even just ramming him, Mario decides to tap into his Mario 64 moveset again and kicks the Goomba to kill it. Considering Mario punches in the earlier footage, the kick and punch could have only been used when you would transform into Mega Mario. At the beginning of this footage, you might have noticed that before getting the Mega Mushroom, Mario had a Fire Flower power-up. Usually when you would transform into Mega Mario, after the mushroom would subside, Mario would revert back into regular Super Mario. In the footage though, that originally wasn't the case because Mario is still wearing his Fire Flower clothes after the Mega Mushroom power-up had subsided. This video was also taken at the E3 2005 show floor, but it's probably from a different booth altogether. The very first thing we see in this footage is the earliest logo of the game. This logo is actually still within the game's files, so I won't be talking about it in full detail here. When the game starts, this Beta Mario Start font is also shown. Like the logo before it, this font is still within the game's file, so I'll talk about it a bit later. Besides those two things, there's really not much we can take a look at that we haven't or have yet to talk about. Power-ups seem to still not pause the game when you grab them, and getting hit has the same effect. The camera zooms out suddenly a bit here, and the blue coin ring which changes into a red ring is still in the game. That might be all the footage I could gather from the E3 showcasing, but there are still some screenshots of the early to late builds of the game from various magazine articles and showcases. Let's start with the screenshots from E3 2004. This screenshot shows us clearer pictures of the earliest versions of the coins and breakable blocks. The breakable blocks seem to have that weird aesthetic that replicate Yoshi's Island a bit, and the coins are less detailed than its final counterpart. Not to mention that this screenshot shows us the question mark block that, like the breakable ones, has that Yoshi's Island inspired design. This screenshot shows us this castle background that got removed, but what's more interesting is the lava below Mario and Luigi. This lava is actually using an unused lava tileset that's still within the game's files. However, I'll cover it when I get to it. The screenshot here shows us an early form of the bottom screen map in the overworld. The castles used on the main map are colored brown, and the main castle looks more like a coliseum rather than a castle. The world map has a bunch of different icons though. We can tell that the next world after World 1 is still a desert level from the icon that resembles pyramids. The other icons though, I can't say for sure if they represent the same worlds. Besides World 8 being in the same place at the end of the map, the icons are completely different from their final game counterparts, and because the icons are grayed out in the footage, it's impossible to know for certain if these icons still represent the same worlds in the final game. The most important screenshot is this screenshot of Mario getting the blue shell power-up. The screenshot tells us that instead of the shell coming out from a question mark block like all other power-ups, there was originally going to be a blue Koopa that you had to defeat in order to take the shell. My guess as to why they removed this blue Koopa is for balancing purposes, as the blue shell itself makes the game really easy to play. Getting the blue shell from regular blue Koopa enemies that can spawn in the game constantly might make the game itself a bit too easy for players. So that was the final screenshot. Now it's time to take a look inside the game to see what didn't make the cut. And as per usual, if you guys want to check out what I don't talk about, such as this hidden crash debugger, or the unused code that puts a Wi-Fi signal on the bottom screen, there'll be a link in the description of the video for you guys to check out. First up on the unused list are one of the game's scenes. Scenes are basically bigger versions of what are known as game actors, which are objects that represent entities in a game's world, such as regular blocks or enemies. The only game scene that's worth noting is the early World Select menu. The menu loads up 8 unused world icons. The icons are obviously still in the game's files, and the menu bears a similar design to the World Select menu in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. You can rotate the spheres left or right, and zoom in and out using the X or Y buttons when L or R is held down. Selecting world is done by naturally pressing A, and pressing select or start takes you back to a debugging menu. There's an abundant amount of unused game actors that are still left inside the game. One game actor is this rotating log that is glitchy and, well, obviously rotates. It also has 2 other variations, with the only difference being that one is twice as long as the other. This pile of bricks doesn't seem all that interesting when we look at it here. When it's inside the game though, the set of bricks act like jelly as they squash and stretch when Mario steps on it. The bricks can be used like a springboard because of this unique ability, but it doesn't work correctly if Mario has a power-up like a mini mushroom. The textures for the bricks are named Sample Text 2, meaning that this was, more or less, a placeholder for perhaps another texture. Here's a giant version of the Fire Piranha Plant enemy. Although you can see regular-sized ones in the game, you never see one that's big. This enemy is surprisingly working perfectly, and it makes me wonder why they left it out of the final game, because the next game in the series, New Super Mario Bros. Wii, uses this sized version. Here's a lava bubble that's, well, invisible. It works just like any other lava bubble in the game, but it has the trait of being invisible. The lava bubble moves horizontally instead of vertically, and the only time you'll be able to see it in-game is if Mario dies to it. This texture is named Jungle Kusa, and its purpose is just to serve as a simple foreground decoration piece for the jungle levels. This cloud texture is just an example of the many cloud foreground effects that go unused. Some of these variations are used, but a majority of them are never seen. The problem is when 2D models like the Goombas or Koopas are on screen, they kind of go in front of the texture. This happens due to the Nintendo DS's limitations, and it's probably why most of these cloud effects are never used. There are many different enemy settings that are unused in the game. The Cheep Cheeps have a setting that allows them to skip across the water. They also have the ability to move along the edges of platforms like spike-top enemies. The Balloon Boos have a setting to follow you like regular Boos, though the hitbox for them are a bit off of the actual model. On the opposite end, regular Boos and Spinies have an option that allows them to move faster. Wigglers and Swoopers both have the setting to be big, but both of them are a bit glitchy. The end segment for the big Wiggler doesn't appear until it becomes angry, and the big Swooper's collision detection becomes a bit off. The sushi sharks have an option to be smaller in size and have the option to move back and forth. The regular sushis in-game just move continuously left forever. The logs used to hold chain chomps in place have different settings for how many chain chomps can be on them. One setting is to have an empty log, while the other makes it possible to put more than one chain chomp on the log. This setting will usually crash the game because the game is set to intentionally crash if more than one chain chomp is on the log. You can only see the multiple chain chomps if you change the RAM address in the USA version of the ROM after entering a level. If you're able to get it to work, don't release them because apparently releasing the multiple chain chomps crashes the game too. Finally, the block hoppers have an option to use regular brick blocks instead of the usual question mark block that's used in game. Even some of the platforms have different settings. The springboard has an option to be giant. It can be used to launch Mario higher than usual, but it's a bit glitchy. If you hold the run button and jump on the springboard without pressing A, Mario kind of just grabs the springboard right under him. While not specifically a platform, the friendly blue dinosaur Dory has different options for which way he's moving and facing. There's an option for Dory to move left instead of the usual right direction. He also has an option to face towards the foreground or the background, though the collision gets a bit weird as seen with the foreground Dory's collision reaching to the moon. Dory also has 4 different sizes, and while 2 of these are used in game, the other 2 go unused. The expandable blocks that Mario can hit have an option to turn solid after the 4th hit. The tilting platform in World 7-2 has several options of moving left, right, and even a descending option. These movements were eventually incorporated into the later New Super Mario Bros. Games. There are several platforms that have the option to be on moving tracks. These include the square block, the triangle block, the rectangle block, and the mushroom platform. Curiously enough, the mushroom platforms also have an unused setting for when it bobs side to side, and uses an unused green mushroom texture found inside the game's files. There are several leftover tile sets for many different things, ranging from doors to the water that Mario swims through. The first one is this unused lava tile set located in the files for the castle, tower, volcano levels, and the Bowser Jr. boss fights. It is animated and, as shown before, you can even see this tile set being used in the early E3 demos. Here's an unused water tile set that's only notable for not being animated. The reason it's not used is because Mario apparently swims behind it rather than in front of the tile set. The ghost houses have 2 unused tile sets, a dark doorway and some sort of Boo statue. The dark doorway still has regular door properties, which means that Mario can interact with it and pull a door out of nowhere. The Boo statue has an unfinished base, meaning it could have been copied to make the statue look like this as a whole. The castle level of the game has this pillar and this ice block tile set inside its files. The pillar was just going to be used as background decoration because Mario can go in front of it. The ice block, on the other hand, doesn't have the usual properties of being slippery and actually has a different texture than the actual ice blocks used in-game. World 8's castle has a bit more unused textures located in its files. It has this unused tile set of grey bricks, which might be an early texture for the bricks used in between the question mark blocks. There's also this early unused tile set for the entire boss room covered in X's. If we restored this tile set to its original glory, you might notice that this texture was used for the Mega Goomba boss fight room in the E3 footage. The X's on the original file were supposed to tell the developers not to use the tile set and possibly delete it, but I'm guessing they overlooked it or completely forgot to do that. This early final boss door was also marked all over with the X's, and I'm guessing they missed deleting this unused tile set too. These 2 outlines symbolize the faint fragments of a yellow and red coin. Weirdly enough, these 2 don't materialize when an exclamation mark switches on, and the red coin outline acts like a yellow coin when it does materialize. There are 2 tile sets that stand out from the rest by having the ability to be animated. This bumper was going to be used at the end of platform tracks, and kind of bears similarities to the bumpers used in Super Mario Bros. 3. This set of animations is of an erupting volcano, perhaps to be used in World 8-8 where the volcanic debris is falling down. Both of these animated tile sets are omitted completely from the code that loads in the textures into the game. There are 3 unused backgrounds in the game, some of which are paired with unused tilesets. This background is of a volcanic mountain area, and it's paired with this tileset that seems to represent a mountain-ish tileset. Underground levels have 2 unused backgrounds that range from a red rocky background with a brown tileset, and this stalagmite background with a rocky tileset. Oddly enough, there's a bunch of NES-based tilesets and backgrounds that are in the files. There are tilesets of Mario in his death animation with a Lakitu and a Spiny, Fire Mario throwing fireballs at Bowser, Mario and Luigi swimming, Mario and Luigi in states of running and jumping, and finally, a background of Mario climbing a vine through the clouds and a pink sky. All of these backgrounds are paired with this NES tileset that, to me, kind of resembles a Super Mario Bros. 3 look. 3 unused files in the game relate to some of the music tracks or sounds. The first audio track is named BGM Amb Chica, or, when translated, Ambient Underground, and plays sounds of water dripping. Let's take a listen. Despite this file being named to underground levels, it's more likely that this audio was going to be played in the PT Piranha or Cheap Skipper's boss fight room. This next file has the name BGM Sample, meaning that this was a test track used for testing the sound of the game. Let's take a listen. You might have noticed that the music has similarities to the credits theme in the final game, minus some instruments that are missing in this version of the song. The early version of the ground theme for the Mario vs. Luigi multiplayer also made it into the files of the game. Let's take a listen. The track sounds nearly identical to the E3 2005 trailer theme because of its slower tempo. There are also sounds of steel pans instead of the chip-tune-ish sounds that you hear in the final version of the song. Now we're getting into the more interesting stuff. Let's talk about the unused graphics in the game. First are these 2 unused icons. This icon, when translated, says preliminary, and the other one is just a curved line. Both of these icons were just used as merely placeholders. This icon of a lightning bolt is very special. According to the article on PressTheButtons.com, this was seen in the early E3 builds of the game and had the ability to shrink the other players in the versus mode. It's actually very similar to the lightning bolt power-up in the Mario Kart series. It even has a sound file tied to it, though the file itself is completely empty. One of the many leftover images found in the game is actually the early version of the logo for the game itself. The logo, as you've seen before, was used in the earlier E3 2005 build of the game and resembles a bit of the Super Mario Bros. Deluxe logo. Funny enough, there is a higher quality version of this logo that was shown on the E3 2005 press release kit. These Mario and Luigi start and number icons can be seen in the early E3 2005 builds and various screenshots. The number icons though have a particular font that makes them look similar to the numbers in Super Mario 64 DS. This pile of textures were going to be used as a sort of tile set for the bottom screen of the main menu of the game. This pipe texture is actually used in the game itself. The one on screen right now is just in lower quality. The gray brick texture surprisingly comes from the castle levels of the original Super Mario Bros. The progress bar on the bottom of the screen when you're in a level has one unused icon, and it's this skull. The skull was supposed to represent bosses in the castle levels of the game on the progress bar. It's still shown in various early screenshots of the game. Koopas have been around the Mario series since its inception, and it's no surprise that there are various unused versions of the enemy in this game. One of those versions is this jumbled pile of textures, internally named OB Sample 256 NCE NCG and Sample 256 NCL. Just from the name itself, it's easy to guess that the textures were only test images. Piecing together this early Koopa, there are some differences to the one used in the game. Early Koopas are missing some hints of the green in their eyes, and their eyes itself are entirely black. The shell of the early Koopa is also smaller, and cuts off a bit in the back of the sprite. The other unused Koopa is this 3D model version of the enemy. Nearly all of the Koopas in the regular game use a 2D model, except for the Koopas climbing the fences and the Koopa shell used in the intro of the game. You might have seen this 3D model in the earlier footage, and it can be seen in early screenshots too. Some of the other models left over are this purple question mark block, a 2D model of the pointing hand, and a wooden platform. We don't actually know how the purple question mark block would have been used, but we do know that its internal name is Enemy I Hatena Normal 2. The pointing hand is, for some weird reason, located within the directories for the enemy files, and was obviously replaced with the now 3D model in the final game. The wooden platform is a 3D model, possibly of the wheel-attached platform in the World 2 Tower. Much of the development seems to have taken a lot from Super Mario 64 DS, so it's no surprise that there's a couple of unused models from the game within New Super Mario Bros. The first model are the collapsible stairs located in the Bowser courses in 64 DS. These stairs were possibly placeholders for the stairs used in the ghost houses. This is the swing found in the Rainbow Ride course in Mario 64 DS. Its internal name is RC Branco, or when translated, RC Swing, and was meant to be a placeholder for the metal swings you see in the World 4 castle. You might have seen these question mark switches from Mario 64 DS earlier in the E3 footage being used. The model, named Hatena Switch, was obviously replaced with the 2D switches found inside the final version of the game. The rest of the leftovers from Mario 64 DS didn't really serve any purpose in the development. These include the exclamation mark switches, the star switch, and the treasure chests from Jolly Roger Bay. What's interesting to note is that while the treasure chests aren't used at all in this game, treasure chests in general do get used in the later games like New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Here's a unused texture for a power-up maybe? These are textures for both Mario and Luigi for both possible power-ups. The texture has the black overalls that don't seem to be associated with anything, but we do know that the white texture is used as the base color for the Starman power-up. Remember that blue ring in the earlier E3 footage that I talked about for a bit? Well, here it is, along with its red, green, and red and green mixed variant. This supposed red ring, which funny enough has the name OBJ E3 ring, was used as the checkpoints in levels during the E3 demos. It's usually the color blue when it's in its natural state, but it changes color depending on which brother touches it. If Mario touches it, the ring becomes red, and if Luigi touches it, it naturally becomes green. The multiplayer used the mixed red and green ring if either of the brothers touches it in that mode. The Mario red ring is the only one that was obviously used as the red rings you see throughout the game, while the rest of the rings go completely unused. The last of the textures are these, which I swear they're not psychedelic in the slightest. These textures have the names Demo/Staff Roll and Staff Roll, meaning that these were used for testing the credit images and the rolling animations. Weirdly, there are some unused transitions for when you enter a level from the hub world. There's a transition for a faded circle, and a transition that uses waves. Some transitions from Mario 64 DS are also left over, such as the star transition, and the transition for Yoshi, and the transition for Wario. There's just a little bit left over from Mario 64 DS, and it's some of Mario's animations. Many of these animations we've actually seen in early builds of the game. This animation where Mario backflips and ends with a punch, we've already kind of seen in the earlier footage where Mario's punching the Mega Goomba. The one animation that we actually haven't seen is this animation of a fourth jump. This jump animation is supposed to be played when you would bounce off an enemy after the fourth consecutive jump. He would bounce off the enemy and twirl in the air with his fist held up high. And can I just say on a side note, it kinda resembles the animation Mario does for his up tilt in the Smash Bros. Series, but that's most likely a coincidence on my part. Lastly, but certainly not least, let's take a look at the leftover levels that never got used. Most of the 7 unused levels were for the Mario vs Luigi multiplayer, but there are 2 levels from the single player campaign we can take a look at, such as this unused bonus level for World 1A. Only present in the USA version of New Super Mario Bros., this unused bonus room has a similar layout to the second Star Coin bonus room in the level, though the structure of the room seems to suggest this room was going to use a water tile set because the pipes are too high for either Mario or Luigi to jump to regularly. The pipes themselves still have their properties of being broken should the player become Mega Mario or Luigi. The only other unused single player level is this one of the cannon that goes to World 8. This level is one of the 2 levels that is actually playable and could be placed in World 6 because of the backgrounds and tiles that are used in this level. What's weird is the music that plays for this level is one of the multiplayer versus tracks, which never really plays in any of the proper single player levels. Moving on to the unused multiplayer levels. The first one was designed with an early version of the Grassland tile set. The mushroom platforms were anchored to the ground a bit differently than how they are in the final game, so they kinda just float here in the unused level. The second level is shaped to be more boxed in and uses a variety of objects including the giant springboard I mentioned before, an unused pillar graphic, and a lava tile set. This third level used to have a special mechanic that would allow it to use multiple tile sets and backgrounds all in one level. Because the mechanic isn't in the game anymore, this level won't work in the final game. It has 3 levels, and it uses doors in order to travel between them all. This second area floating over here looks to be a bonus room of some sort because it is boxed in, and I assume the only way into this part of the level are the pipes. In the third area, there are a couple of vines that I imagine you had to climb in order to cross the chasm lurking below. This level also uses the multiple chain jump mode that causes the game to freeze, which makes this level even more unplayable. These last 2 levels were actually playable or seen at E3. This one is where the unused midpoint ring was first seen. However, the ring and the cannon pipes that were seen at E3 have been removed in this version of the level. Besides that, this level is basically identical to the one at E3. The flagpole though is using the same flagpole as the unused level that I'll be talking about right now. This level contains power-ups in nearly every single question mark block. Just like the level before, the pipe cannons have been removed, and the end of the level is styled in the original Super Mario Bros. Way, where there's a staircase of blocks leading to a flagpole that's styled like the original flagpole in the NES game. This is also the only other level that is stable and can be fully played. And so those were the beta files of New Super Mario Bros. For the Nintendo DS. Is it any wonder why there's so much left over from the development of this game? It was Mario's comeback to the 2D platformer genre in years, and I'd say it was worth the constant changes in the game. Yeah, there were some cool mechanics like the multiple unused multiplayer levels, and the possibility of being able to play multiplayer in the single player mode in general, but this game is considered to be a landmark in Mario's platforming career, and one of the DS's must-own titles. I don't think that some unused modes and features hindered the game in the slightest. New Super Mario Bros. Is still a really good 2D platformer, one that I believe anyone should try out if they get the chance. With that being said, my name's NinFan237, and I'll see you guys next time. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Welcome to the Endcard, where I will mostly ad-lib all of this, and it'll probably lengthen the length of this video. As most people already know at this point. Anyways, hopefully to prevent that, I'm just gonna try and say everything outright right now. So, if you like this video, like and subscribe, if you want more, or if you don't like it, then, I'm kind of questioning why you're still watching this to begin with. Anyways, if you have a game to suggest for a Beta Files episode, please comment down in the video. I've already actually gotten multiple suggestions, some of which are, have been in my, to-do list, others, I just recently added. And if you find a mistake in my videos, as most people tend to find mistakes, lots of them, please comment down below as well. I'm only human, and it's hard to get every single little minute detail when you're the only person working on these types of videos. And I might have already said this in my like 1,000 subscriber and my 1,500 subscriber update videos, but I just like to thank you guys so much for watching these and subscribing, because I was not expecting the last video, which was Bountiful Bikini Bottom. By the way, you can go watch that right now if you haven't watched it before. I was not expecting that video to get so popular, and because of that, it literally grew like my channel to the point where I was even questioning if there was like a bot that was just like, you know, subscribing constantly, but no, it's fate happened. That's what happened. And a bunch of you subscribed, so thank you for that. In fact, so many people have subscribed to the point where it's like people from like other countries other than the US are watching, which I guess is not really like that surprising. Which I guess is like, it's not that surprising that like people from like Mexico are like, you know, watching my videos, but people from also overseas, like from Japan, are watching my videos, which is completely crazy to me. I didn't expect like my videos to actually be watched by basically everyone. And well, I can't believe I'm about to do this. For those of you who are watching this overseas right now, who are actually Japanese, gomen nasai. Watashi wa skoshi nihongo o hanashimasu. I don't even know if I said that right, but woo, college learning, I guess. Anyways, it's crazy to think that you guys, people are watching it overseas, so thank you guys so much for watching these videos. Also, speaking of that update video, I did mention that I was going to, start accepting donations, but I kind of decided against that recently, mostly because I've been, well, to put it simply, I felt like I was succumbing to my desires, and I realized I wasn't myself. There's that Persona 5 joke for those of you who played that game. I need to stop talking about anime, or anime-ish things. So I decided to just like completely not accept donations anymore, and just keep on creating videos without them. So yeah. And also, I've also decided to stop streaming for at least a while, like live streaming, mostly because as I just like literally said beforehand, I'm in college, and the college work is starting to actually eat up a lot of my free time. So much of my free time, in fact, that I have to get rid of like doing something, and I don't want to get rid of making YouTube videos, so I decided that, well, I'm not really streaming that much to begin with, and I'm not a big streamer, so I might as well just completely just like quit on streaming, at least for a while. So you can go follow me on Twitch if you want to, but don't expect there to be any like stream. Don't expect there to be any kind of stream anytime soon. Speaking of following, you can also follow me on Twitter at ninfan237 if you'd like to know what I've been up to and hear my thoughts on games, or just at me for something if you want. So yeah, that should be about it. So what's gonna be the game for the next video? Well, I've been keeping it a secret for a while, but I think it's about time I reveal it.